Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Security Guy TV. My next guest, Ms. Despina Stomatolos. She's the Senior Commercial Manager of Access Control for Genetec.com. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, today's topic is access control migration. And when I heard that term, I said, oh, yeah, access control came out 25 years ago when I was at Fox. And you know what? They probably have the same system over there. Maybe they need to change. So let's talk about that. It's 2021. Are you saying that people are not migrating right now? People are still holding on to old systems, apparently.
Well, there's people migrating, but a lot of customers, believe it or not, are holding on to systems that are 15 and 20 years old. Because if their doors are unlocking and locking, they're like, it works. We don't need to switch it right now.
Well, but you still have the problem of not knowing who's in your network, who has an ID card that was issued 20 years ago that's still active. I came across that several times where old ID cards were turned on. Why are people not switching? I don't think this is strictly economics now, because these systems are affordable.
Yeah, there's a few reasons. Number one, when switching access control, the process seems daunting, right? How many buildings do I have to change? Is it going to disrupt my everyday operation? Am I going to be at a security risk? You know, when you're changing access control on a specific door or area, will someone get access and cause possible damage? And then, yeah, there is actually a cost associated to it. So because access control has a lot of hardware that's involved, there will be some cost associated, and some customers, have to budget that into their budget for the year. And then the other thing is a lot of customers just don't have the time for it. Oftentimes, they have to take on some of the work and project manage the access control migration, and they just don't have the resources and the time to do so.
Well, if there's one thing Genetec is known for, it's migration integration. I mean, that's your bread and butter. You guys make stuff seamless. So let's define access control migration for our listeners who are sitting at home saying, I know I should have done it 15 years ago. I don't want to do it. Let's define that for them, and we'll get into how that's beneficial.
So yeah, access control migration can be also called takeover or a switching of the system. We just refer to them as migrations. Is a customer basically changing their access control system? And there's different ways of going about it. Traditionally, access control has been proprietary, and so the hardware is proprietary. At Genetec, we do have different options to really ease the migration process. Because we're an open access control solution, oftentimes the customer will get to keep the hardware they have on place, keep the wiring, and all we have to do is really change the software, migrate over the database. If some hardware needs to be replaced, we really work with a customer to see what needs to be replaced and what can be kept on site. So we try to ease the process and make it as simple as possible for the customer. Again, thinking back to the whole disruption of their business, we want to minimize any disruption and really make it as smooth as possible.
So if I'm the security director at the studio, I'm sitting there thinking that the biggest disruptor to my business is somebody getting into my live broadcast center with an ID that nobody vetted, right? Isn't that a bigger disruption than saying, oh, I have to wait 2 days for access control to be down? I'm surprised people are hanging on to this "it's not easy" mentality in 2021, but I guess that's what's happening.
No, the needs from 20 years ago, if I think of Genetec, 10 years ago, we had one floor on one of our buildings. And so that's one access control system to manage just the floor. Right now, just in our Montreal headquarters, I think we're in 3 or 4 different buildings. So obviously the access control needs and our security needs evolved over time. And if the access control system cannot evolve with those needs, then you are putting your assets and your people at risk.
You may be subjecting your company to liability. I'm no lawyer, but think about that. I didn't upgrade my system. We didn't vet it. We didn't audit it. And we could have done it for a reasonable price. And now we have people inside that have caused a problem. I think it's a serious issue. Let's talk about the benefits. I have a facility guy sitting here listening to the show. Let's tell him what the benefits are for switching.
Well, number one is access to new technology. Again, thinking about 15 years ago, just in our own lives, technology has changed a lot, and it has done so for access control as well. And we're talking about not only using access control to lock and unlock doors, but how they could improve their everyday operations. With COVID, we had customers come to us and say, how can I use my access control system to track an individual who may have come in contact that was contaminated. So we were able to use access control to track those individuals. Or, how now with many people working from home, occupancy rates will be different in the office. How can I use my access control system to see, who's coming in the office? How much are my different floors of the building being used? How much are my conferences being used? Based on that information, they could actually decide to, you know what, I don't need an extra building. We could have one building, move all the people into that one and save a lot of money. So it's really about doing a lot more with their system than they were able to do 15, 20 years ago. And that's why people are starting to look at access control, not as a capital expenditure, but really as how they could have a return on their investment by being able to do so much more with it.
Well, that's a very interesting way to look at it, because capital expenditure is always a word we cringe when we have to go to budgets and talk about, but it makes sense to integrate it into your daily operating systems. Now, let's talk about legacy systems. What's the oldest system you've seen out there?
20 years old. When I was speaking to somebody actually in Australia, I think, when we were introducing a product down there, and they're like, our system's 20 years old. It's crazy, but yep, we're still holding on to it. I was like, oh, wow, 2022, anywhere around there, you'll see it. Was
the company still in business and still supporting help on it?
Yeah, they were in business, but they were suffering. They're like, we have a lot of people trying to maintain the system. I often say your system has to work for you. You shouldn't be having to work for your system. And when you're holding on to a system that's 15, 20 years old, you're working for that system at that point, because in terms of parts, it's hard to find some parts at that point. Upgrades are much harder. Oftentimes they're heavily integrated systems, so those integrations are hard to manage. Being able, to unify or integrate video with access control to get a full view of an event is much harder. It's oftentimes a swivel chair where, okay, I get the access control report, let me see what video is associated to that. A lot of time is wasted in trying to figure out what's going on in your security environment with an old access control system.
Well, let's talk about some of the pitfalls. If you maintain that legacy system and you don't upgrade, what are people facing? And I got to say, with technology exponentially growing every single month, you might not know what threat you have on the horizon if you don't upgrade tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, so in the past, one of the major threats was, okay, somebody gets access to your building that, shouldn't have access, and they could possibly steal something or whatnot. The risks today are much different, and I'm talking about cyber risks. And we've seen that, especially in the last year with COVID, there's been a lot of major cyber attacks in huge areas, oil and gas. We saw it with a meatpacking organization down in the States where they weren't able to supply. And an unsecure access control system can be a point of entry into an organization's network. So it's not necessarily about, hacking the access control system and what they can do, which they can open doors that shouldn't be open, but really giving them a point of entry to the company's network, which could be huge. A cyber attack can cost the company millions of dollars, which is a lot more than what it would cost them to switch to a new IP-based access control system.
It's interesting you should say that. When we talk about denial of service attacks, and we have people that do not upgrade their systems for cybersecurity, and they're attacked and data's breached, they're liable in certain states, yes, especially California. Absolutely. Yeah, you're liable for a data breach in California. So this is the new migration of law coming towards loss of data, because your access control record is information, and that's the most valuable thing right now.
Exactly. There's a privacy concern as well, right? Because oftentimes access control systems are integrated with a human resources system where all the information, including your social security number, is stored. And so someone wanting to get that information could cause a lot of damage.
All right. You're going to try and sell me right now. I want you to give me 2 or 3 questions that most security directors need to ask their system integrators about migrating, because they may not ask the right question. If I sit here and I'm not sophisticated in IT and I say, is this going to be hard? That IT guy is going to say, oh, it's not hard. Don't worry about it. Give me some real questions I can pin them down to make sure that I get an answer that's accurate.
Well, like anything, when you're working with an integrator, you got to make sure you got the right guy, right? Just like an employee, you interview them and you want to make sure that the right person for that job. Oftentimes, you'll have security integrators that have a lot of experience on the video side, but not so much on access control. So, number one question is what experience do they have in migrating access control systems? And then, do they have experience with your system that you have in place? Different manufacturers, especially that date back from 15, 20 years, the workflows will be different when migrating. So you need to understand what they've done, possibly ask if you could talk to the customers that they have migrated over and see what their experience is. And then I think it's very important to also understand the project management of the whole migration, because it is a pretty heavy uptake to do for an organization. We've seen customers where they didn't work with the right integrator, and then they had to put resources in place that would project manage. So they have to leave their daily job and really focus on helping the integrator migrate the system over. Fortunately, at Genetec, we have professional services that really help with the migration process, and we do work with integrators that know what they're doing and really help the customer really make it as simple and as possible. Obviously, it is a big project, like I mentioned, but we don't want the customer, we want the customer to focus on their business, and we'll focus on their access control.
You said something I think that was really important about integration. Does your integrator understand the systems he's dealing with? Back in the day, things were proprietary. You had proprietary BIOS on some of these things. You couldn't integrate, an access control system A with access control B. It was almost impossible. What is the state of integration now? Aren't most systems kind of plug and play with each other if you have the right interface?
So the good thing with Genetec is that we're a unified platform. So everything, if you have video from Genetec, and you want to add access control, you're simply lighting up another license and everything is good to go. Everything is very intuitive, and the unification happens down at the platform level. So even in terms of configuring the system, it's much more simpler than it would be if it's a heavily integrated system. Having said that, of course, it's easier to integrate systems. We work with we have a lot of integrations to different hardware because we are an open access control solution. And so customers that have locks from a certain provider and they want controllers from another type of manufacturer, then we're able to easily incorporate that in their access control architecture. So because customers' needs are different, we don't want a cookie cutter solution for everyone. So we work with the customer and the integrator to understand what are the challenges, and then based on that, we'll have the different hardware and whatnot to really address their needs.
Now, there's no doubt that Genetec has the best user interface I've ever seen. And I'm not just saying that. People know that. It's really top drawer. It's so easy for the average person that may not have any IT skills to get in there and understand the system and use it. Here's an argument I had back in the day when I was at Fox and Disney. I was for separate systems. I liked different vendors in there that didn't quite integrate, that weren't quite connected, because then I didn't put everything into one basket, right? I didn't have one system to hack. I had 10 systems to hack. Talk to me about that concern. There's no doubt Genetec has the best IT security in their systems, but that somebody might be reluctant to use one system for everything. Ease their mind about that.
It's really about education and what you can do and how much you can do with a unified system versus having a bunch of different systems. If you do have a number of integrated systems, you're working with a lot of different people. You're having SLAs for each one of those manufacturers. Every time there's an upgrade with one manufacturer, doesn't mean that there's going to be an upgrade with the video or the ALPR that's there. So that's a lot of maintenance and resources and time that is required. And really, the user experience is not as great. Again, not only at the operator level, but at the configuration level. So if we go back to me saying, we want to ease the process of migration, make it as simple as possible, having a unified system allows us to do that, because it's so much simpler to just associate a door to a camera. And if you're thinking about an event that happens, you run a report, it's all together right away because everything's unified at the core. So it's really, I understand the concerns that customers have, often not wanting to place all your eggs in one basket, but really they have to look at the pros and cons of doing that, because a lot more resources will be needed if they have a heavily integrated system, and the experience will just not be the same. And I'll just add to that, if for some weird reason somebody is not happy and they would say, you know what, I do want to switch access control. I don't want to have everything from Genetec. Because we are an open architecture, they could do that easily. Whereas with proprietary, if they choose a proprietary solution, switching will be a lot more difficult.
That's the secret sauce, right? That's how you guys made it. I mean, that's it. You were able, I think, one of the first, if not the first, platform to be able to bring in other systems, and that's the beauty of it. And really, now in this day and age, I'm of the mind that if I have 6 different systems, I can't watch 6 at once, but I can watch one system at once, right? And I can guard against that. So I think it's the right way to do it. Now let's talk about COVID-19. Has this changed the access control business? I think the answer to that is yes, but maybe it's too big a question. What's going on with this? I mean, we have so many different ways now that we are screening people, not just, do you work here? Tell us about what's going on with that.
Yeah, so I think COVID-19, at least for us, helped because a lot of people started realizing how limited they are and what they're able to do with their old access control system. So all of a sudden, an operator had to work from home. And how do you manage a 15-year-old system from home? Managing access rights, people did have to go to the office and there had to be exceptions. It's often a very, very manual process to do so. Again, going back to saying how you could use your access control system beyond just the door, having contaminated people going in, or we had a hospital come to us and they said, how could I use my access control system to better manage my PPE, the personal protective equipment? And so I think it opened people's eyes to how limited their current system is, and then to the ones that did have a more modern IP-based system, they were able to see, oh, I could do a lot more with my system than I thought. My system does actually adjust to my current situation. And that's really what you want out of a new access control system, is that it evolves with your needs. Things were different 5 years ago. Things are going to be very different as we move forward. Will their access control system be able to adapt and evolve to cater to those needs and different security needs that the customers now have?
Excellent. Let's talk about laws. Because privacy laws are changing every single day. We have the privacy laws in Europe slowly coming to America. I think there's a lot of good in them. Where does access control fall within these privacy laws? Because I'm sure it's being affected somehow.
Absolutely. So yeah, obviously where the data is stored and whatnot, not only in access control, but Genetec in general. Obviously, our mission is to protect the everyday, and that's what we do by securing people and their assets. But we do it without ever impeding on people's privacy, because people's privacy is essential. And not only when using access control, but cameras, they're everywhere now, and everything's being recorded, and your personal information is stored on certain databases. So as Pierre, as our CEO, likes to say, is please remember to forget me. So even though we're gonna protect you physically, we will also protect your privacy in everything we do. So it's really at the core of all our innovation.
Please remember to forget me. That's a fantastic slogan. I'm going to use that. That's a great way to think about it. Excellent, excellent.
Yep.
Despina Stamatelos, she's the Senior Commercial Manager for Access Control at Genetec.com. Ms. Despina, excellent information again. Genetec is absolutely at the top of the list for this kind of stuff. Access control integration, one system platform, easy to use. And you guys are really a legacy company. You've been around a lot longer than people think. And that really says something as well. Thank you so much for coming on Security Guy TV, and good luck to you guys.
Thank you so much for having me. Really had fun.